So, there's a way that sometimes we might wake up in the morning before that familiar sense of identity has crystallized, who I am and what I'm doing here and what's gone wrong, how I'm not okay. There can be a subtle sort of coloring, a voice, a felt sense. We may even experience it as a figure there in the space with us, perhaps blue in color. One of the blue ones has arrived as a representative of that blue region of the spectrum of consciousness, which is a very unique region of experience, area of experience, atmosphere of experience that has a connection with this archetype that I think we've mentioned of the wounded healer. It's like a light, sort of slight hesitation. It's a vulnerability, a sensitivity. And it can be that real sense and wondering and questioning, is something wrong? Am I okay? It's like a background field of shakiness or uncertainty or even a sense of groundlessness. We can't quite find center and ground. Is it really safe to fully show up as I am today on this new day? To step all the way into life, to allow another person to matter, to allow life to matter, to really be here all the way, fully. No more postponement, no more holding back with all of my vulnerabilities, my sensitivities, my eccentricities. That's so exposed, unguarded, naked. Is that really going to feel safe? Am I going to be okay? Am I really going to be seen and held by others, by life, by God, by Goddess, by the divine? Maybe it's just not really going to be worth it. My past experience would certainly bring me to hesitate a bit. I mean, these are good questions. These are soul questions, and ones that we're not likely to immediately be able to answer with our ordinary conceptual mind, which is what I already know. I mean, the questions themselves are alive, actually. The answers, maybe not so much. I mean, I think the invitation from deep in the soul is not to answer these questions necessarily, but to live and move and breathe with them as an inner partner. I mean, it's likely there are going to be some really contradictory feelings about all of this, about showing up, which I think makes a lot of sense, really. Journey of embodied healing and awakening. In my experience, anyway, is contradictory by its very nature. And learning, I think, to hold these contradictions and navigate and stay with that tension in between them without any fantasy that we're going to or we're supposed to resolve them, I think is vital on this path. And it's where all the life is. It's actually in that contradictory field. I mean, we want to awaken. We want to heal, to really participate here, to no longer hold back. know the embodied fruits of an intimate, sensual, connected life. But perhaps, only as long as we don't have to feel too much, as long as we don't have to be in too close of a contact with that embodied vulnerability, as long as we can keep the status quo intact and not necessarily have to turn toward that raw, shaky core, and really to meet those pieces of soul who have scattered there, and all of the lost orphans of psyche and soma who take up residence there in that shaky core, all of the unlived feeling and experience there. But it doesn't really seem to work like that. If only we could make that sort of deal, with life, with God, with Goddess, with the mystery. I want to awaken. To awaken. I want to heal. I want to transform. I really do. But I don't necessarily want to have to feel all that. They embodied with that level of vulnerability, of nakedness, of openness. There must be another way. Didn't I hear a teacher once who said so? So I think we might say, that we want to look at it this way metaphorically, that say door number one, we show up within the interior castle, the castle of soul, and there are a few doorways there. Door number one is to play it safe, to basically keep things as they are. This is the pull of the collective, of the symbolic family, of the culture, and in some ways, perhaps ironically, the pool of much of our contemporary therapies and self help teachings, which are pretty safe, really. And inside door number one, things are relatively okay. I mean, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. There's a way that it can all start to feel a little bit dead inside, flat, uninspiring, deflated, devoid of meaning, lacking in creativity and life force and libido. Relatively safe, but perhaps too safe, too known. And in this, we can become shut down a bit, which makes a lot of sense, which is understandable. I mean, that's the price tag in one way of looking at it for this kind of safety, for the familiar. So just walking down the hall away, then we may come across door number two, which would be more of that embodied, shaky, raw movement into the unknown, where life, my life, is no longer organized around my own hopes and fears and fantasies necessarily. It's organized around something else, something not quite known, where we invite all of those protective strategies and all of that armoring to melt away. When we're left in the shimmering unknown, naked before life, without any real familiar reference point that we can necessarily lean back on and take refuge in. I mean, in some way, it sounds exciting, thrilling. Yes, I want that. Sign me up. Bring it on. You want that. But I think the price tag with this door, with door number 2, is that it's not likely to really always feel all that safe, certain, secure, familiar, known. We just can't ask that of the spiritual path, that confrontation with the unlived, with the raw, open heart. We may feel really alive in that. We may sense or feel or experience a real experiential sense of aliveness with that. But it's also likely, in my experience, to be quite shaky at times, uncertain, tender, as if we're being ground to dust at times, as if I have no idea who and what I am and what this world is and what a relationship is and what love is and what's going to bring me meaning and what death is. It's like I'm starting over. And there's a way that that can feel like, oh my God, this might be too much. It's too much nakedness, too much exposure. It's too raw. I mean, I don't mean that it's unsafe in a physical way, but more of a psychic, inner sort of shakiness because it's so open and naked and raw and pregnant and quantum. Like anything could happen. And while, yes, that's can be thrilling, there's also likely to be a sense of uncertainty and a sense of groundlessness with that. We're just not used to, we're not familiar with, we've not been taught, it's not been modeled to us, to stay embodied to that level of openness. Is that really what I want? And, in being involved in this sort of inquiry for a long time now, personally in my own life, and also in my clinical practice, where there's some version of these doorways that always appear in longer term clinical work. There is this fantasized doorway number 3 down the hall down there. We can sort of see it. There looks like there's a little number 3 scrawled on the doorway. It's the door that we hope will appear, that we would really love for that door to appear, though many of us come to see, I think, that it never quite does. We sometimes think we see it, and that we can walk through it even. But in the end, it's like a rainbow or like a mirage. It's a very vivid appearance, but upon investigation, it has no essential nature, like a dream, because this door doesn't actually exist in reality. And so door number 3 is where we're able to live fully, to awaken, to heal, to participate all the way, to know the embodied fruits of that sort of undividedness and wholeness, that unity of the individual self, of individual consciousness, me, with reality, with the divine ground. We want to know that, but in a way where we don't have to feel too much, be too shaky, too raw, too tender, too taken apart at times, where things are known and clear and always held together, where they're always flowing my way. And by my way, of course, I mean the way that ego consciousness would like them to flow, where I'm in charge of life, of this life. I'm in control of the self, of the beloved, of the totality of reality. Surely it's going to unfold according to my own hopes and fears. It's understandable. It's, you know, but the self, capital S, or the beloved, to use more Sufi language, is never going to conform to my fantasies, my hopes, my fears. She or he or it or they are just too wild, too creative, too undomesticated, undomesticatable for all of that. Because they have, the self has something much more vast, much more benevolent, beautiful, undivided, whole in mind for you, for us. Perhaps that's the ultimate sort of role of the self or of the beloved in our life, and all of the forms that the self or the beloved might take, to expose that and to invite us into something sort of way beyond all that,